to Coping with Jesus, brought to you by St. Walter Church in Roselle, Illinois. This is our 14th week of the Season 2 podcast called Stories of Hope. It is actually our last week of Stories of Hope, and then after a couple of weeks off, in June we'll begin Season 3, in which we'll be talking about close moments to Christ. So thank you for being with us. Today we also have two very special friends with us, Julie Majowski, who is our technology genius here at St. Walter's.
Not a genius.
And usually she's behind the cameras, and today she gets to sit at the table with us. So Julie, this is fun. Thank you for this. I hope those cameras work on their own.
Yes, so do I.
And we have our good friend Beth Sommers with us today also. Thank you for coming back and sharing and being with us. I kind of sent you a quote. I'd like to use a quote for us to think about at the beginning of our podcast, and I kind of sent you one a few days ago. I'm going to read it. I might add a little twist to it, a little extra few words. And this is a quote not from Scripture, but from Pope Francis. And it goes like this. Being a disciple means constantly ready to bring the love of Jesus to others. Being a disciple means being constantly ready to bring the love of Jesus to others. And this can happen unexpectedly and in any place. Be on the street, in the city square, during work, at the park, on a journey, or even in our homes. And I added that to Pope Francis's quote because I think in our homes resonates with us a lot. So what does that quote say to you when you first hear it, especially when you first heard it or read it? What does it say?
The word constantly, to me, is very intimidating because I'm not constantly ready to bring Jesus to others because I sometimes am tired or I'm sometimes crabby so the word constantly in that quote is intimidating, and it feels like it's a lot of pressure to bring Jesus to others. I can sometimes. I feel like I do often, but I think constantly really, again, it's pressure.
It's a challenge.
A challenge. Challenging us.
Yes, we love a challenge, a good challenge. Yeah, constantly. I like the quote, but the constantly part is challenging.
Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? Like, God's always challenging us?
Constantly. Constantly challenging us.
It's a good word.
It is. It is intimidating, but I don't know if, like, I was thinking of the early disciples. Was it even on their radar to be bringing Jesus to others? Because a lot of times it seemed like they were trying to not share Jesus, right? I mean, and is that one of the things that's why he picked them? Because I was thinking of The Chosen. I don't know if you've watched that yet, but with season 1, I haven't watched season 2 yet. They were like a motley crew of people that didn't necessarily fit the mold of what we would consider disciples now.
So, right. So being a disciple means to constantly be ready to bring the love of Jesus to others. And the apostles didn't necessarily seem like people that would.
Right. I was thinking of, was it last week or 2 weeks ago that you were talking about the one of your favorite stories of when they were trying to bring the children to Jesus, and the apostles were saying, don't bother him right now. He's tired. No, Jesus, send them away, whatever. And he's like, no, bring the children to me.
And that kind of shows that they didn't quite get it, the message yet.
I don't think they got it for a long time.
So I actually think that story was more of a lesson to his apostles than to the moms and the children, or even to us. Well, if it's a lesson for them, it's a lesson for us. Obviously, he treats us as apostles in the scriptures, but because he was saying to them, what's important? Bringing my love to the children, bringing my love is more important than me taking a rest, you know. But the apostles, if you, especially watching The Chosen, it is resonating with me that they weren't prepared at all for what he was bringing them to.
Right.
They didn't know they were going to be asked to do so much. So it is true that God is always asking us to do above and beyond, calling us to do above and beyond. You may think you're unworthy, but, and you know, going back to what you said, Beth, about being constantly ready, that was really a learning curve for me when I started teaching kindergarten many years ago in my own community, because I had to be constantly ready, always modeling, because the Jesus table was such an important part of teaching kindergarten for me, and we always talked about how Jesus taught us how to love and how to be kind, and how would that look if I wasn't always being kind, even if they met me in a grocery store or out on a playground, you know. So I had to learn to be, whether I wanted to or not, whether I was in the mood to or not, to be ready to be that Jesus person. Mostly I'm not saying jolly and joyful, but kind, to be kind and understanding.
Yeah. And I don't think you're ever unkind.
I am. I guess when you read it again and it says being constantly ready, I guess I am ready often.
Right.
But it doesn't always come across as constantly. Constantly being ready to do something is different than constantly doing something, which is impossible.
Right.
So the two words together are a little less intimidating than thinking we have to constantly do the things we're supposed to do.
But you taught also, so you know, being in school like that, you had to be, and yours was even more challenging. Mine was easy in kindergarten.
Yeah, everybody's nice in kindergarten.
Loving, but in junior high, it's a little bit easier to get frustrated with the children. Could be.
Well, I have to say, I loved junior high students.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't always like junior high students, but I always loved my students. There was not one student that I could not think of something to love about them. Mm-hmm. All of them. I loved teaching. And I want to change the subject here for a second and go back to the apostles, because I think we talked before about the apostles didn't choose each other to hang around with.
Right.
And it's kind of like you don't choose your family,
Right.
you choose your friends, but the apostles didn't really, they were 12 men who may not have gotten together before Jesus chose them. So that would have been a challenge for them to constantly be ready together.
You can kind of see in The Chosen almost like they're rolling their eyes at each other. I mean, like they don't.
Sometimes.
Yeah, they don't always get.
Or the episode where he chose. So again, and not to ruin it, because you do have to watch it. Maybe this summer we'll
It's
do that
okay.
together.
I'll forget anyway.
Good point. But when he chose Matthew, who in The Chosen is depicted almost like someone on the spectrum, so a little off or unique, but also because he was a tax collector and hated by everybody, and in earlier episodes had an encounter with Peter and his brother Andrew, where he was forcing them to pay for taxes that they didn't have the money for. So they really hated him. And then Jesus told him, "Follow me, come with me, come." And Matthew's like, "Me?" And he's like, "Yes, Matthew, son of whatever his name is, I can't remember. Yeah, come follow me." And he just got up out of his little thing, locked his door, and said, "I'm leaving all of everything," because he just felt called. And they're like, "What are you doing? Jesus, you have no idea who this guy is." And they were like, he's like, "No, I do know."
But Matthew had an idea who Jesus was.
I think so. And that's,
he paid attention to details.
To detail.
And he was following and watching and taking notes.
Yeah.
Because he was told to follow him and find out
more about
more
him. Yeah.
him. And he did his homework. And he was.
I think he was the first one to really realize who he was. In this.
In the way
the chosen. Yeah.
In the chosen.
Right.
But however it happened, we don't know. But these are 12 people who were called from different walks and not necessarily the saints, which brings us to another conversation, because saints weren't always perfect either,
Right.
But they weren't always the saints. They were ordinary and less in some ways. They were unique.
Yeah, which is why I love Saint Mother Teresa, because she had, like, I can identify with her. She did Christ's work, but she didn't always feel close to Christ or close to God, because there were so many times she had dry periods. She just kept doing it, though.
Yes, I love that too, that even when she was having a rough time, she still had that. She was still constantly bringing the love of Jesus to others, because she might have felt distant from Jesus, but she felt a calling and a compassion to others. And so that gift that she had, she used, whether she connected it to my close relationship to Jesus or not.
Right.
And that is something that I think we have to be easy on ourselves about too. Like when you think of saints and how, or Mother Teresa is a perfect example. She was close to God, then she was distant, then she just, obviously came back close because it was there. But we have to give ourselves that we might go in and out of our relationships with other people, with Christ, and as we go in and out of those relationships, sometimes we come out stronger, and we're also giving to other people as we do it.
Right.
By our sharing or by our stories. If you had a rough time and share it, then people can say, "Oh, I had a rough time too. I guess it's okay. She turned out okay. She turned out to be a saint."
But back to you being unkind.
Well, let's talk about that.
I forgot what you said about that.
But I think we all have issues or times where we maybe are unkind. But you're constantly like being Jesus to other people, even when you don't realize you're doing it. Like you do it for me all the time.
That's unkind to you.
Well, why wouldn't you be?
But I think other people, when you say being Jesus, I think that Jesus, you see Jesus, I see Jesus in other people. And I think that it's easy to be kind if if we're friends. I think everybody is unkind sometimes, but But I think the kindness part is to be constantly ready. So I think everyone constantly tries to be kind.
Right.
Most people do.
Right.
So being ready.
You're ready. You may not be always able.
That's right. But I'm ready.
Ready, but not always able.
So what do you think about, we're not always doing it, even though we would like to be. So I was busy and I didn't feel that I was that kind to you the other day because I was rushing by and I didn't stand and listen to, I said, how are you? And I didn't stand and listen to your answer or whatever. And then I go home and think about it. What do we do about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are many times where you look back at what just happened or happened the day before and you think, oh, it didn't go the way I wanted it to go.
I could have done that better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or
Or I
sometimes
think
it's like an out-of-body experience. Like, I can see myself or hear myself and think, that's not what you should be saying or doing.
it's not what
Come
I
back.
think of me. It's not what I think of me.
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah, I think I'm better. I think I'm more capable than that.
Yes. I do that with my kids, with my sons all the time. Like, I say something and I thought, oh, I wish I could just grab that back.
And then what do we do? Do we have the courage, that word courage that we used last week? Do we have the courage to apologize? Or do we just make up for it next time?
I think it depends on the situation.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been other times where people have said to me, like, I didn't mean, when I said that, I didn't mean it the way it came out. I
Right.
find I say that a lot. I said this, but that's not how I meant it. And I think that's not hard to do. I think it's pretty easy to say, in reviewing, in thinking about what I said, I don't think that's difficult at all.
Right.
To say.
To go back and say, that's,
I didn't mean that. And most of the time people didn't hear it.
oh yes,
That way.
true.
They're like, oh, I didn't recognize that. Oh,
Then never
Then you
mind.
feel like an idiot.
Then never mind.
that's the way to say it.
Oh no, I was
Yes.
being nice to you. You're right.
Usually I'm like, no, I wasn't that nice. I really should have spent more time on it. But we have a tendency to be hard on ourselves. And
Or we're mothers. That's the thing.
mhm.
Always. And mothers of sons.
And mothers of sons, that's us. So we have a different kind of lesson, really and truly. I think daughters will tell us right out what's upsetting them. They'll get mad and they'll let you know. And the sons kind of get a little moody, and you're like, "What did I do something wrong?" And you take it personally,
Right. Or they just don't care.
or that. Yeah.
Maybe they didn't even hear you because they weren't listening.
So even in kindergarten, little girls, if I corrected one of the little girls, they might get kind of mad at me and like not really look at me for a while or something. But little boys, if I corrected one of them, they're like trying really hard to make up for it. They're like, "So Mrs. Burke, look at how I'm sitting." Look at how I'm sitting. I'm like, "Yes, I noticed that." But so at least so with boys, I think we do have an extra little challenge, but that's the way God made them, and
Yeah.
God blessed us with this gift. I love having sons.
So do I.
I do too.
Works well.
Do you think that men need more affirmation than women?
I'm going through my sons.
Because I think that's where I fall short sometimes, is that I don't always affirm. I can be critical.
Verbalize it.
Yes, verbally. Yes, I can be critical or make suggestions that they find as critical. But they would rather just me to say, "Oh, good job." Even if it wasn't
If it's not
necessarily,
a good job.
or maybe it wasn't necessarily the way I would have done it. Instead of say, "Yeah, but maybe you should do this instead." Like, we're always trying to give them ideas.
They don't necessarily want the
And they don't
advice.
want the advice. They just want you to say, "You did a good job," or "Way to go."
And that brings me back to this bringing the love of Jesus to others, because Jesus didn't correct everybody all the time. He just gave his love.
Right?
He loved, he wanted to get the message across that I love you no matter what, that you are a child of God.
Like the woman that was about to get stoned, and he was just writing his things in the sand.
Mhm.
I'm sure she obviously did something that warned
Or
warranted stoning or something.
The woman at the well in
Mhm.
Chosen. I mean, he didn't correct her at all.
Right.
He just
That was a
listened
beautiful-
to her. I mean, in that particular version, the way they portrayed it, he listened to her and he let her talk. So compassion was his love that he was giving, not correction.
Right.
So I think you might be right there. We have a tendency to correct our children, maybe especially the boys. And we should instead just, my mother used to say, you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So sometimes I think we need to just
Not say anything at all. Yeah.
I have a hard time with that.
Yeah. Especially if they ask, like, what do you think? So you have to decide, do they really want to know what I think? Or do they just want to hear, like, oh, it's fine.
Right.
Or it's good, or you did a good job. Yeah. So
Sometimes I preface that. Do you really want to know, or would you like me to just affirm you? And most of the time, my oldest just wants affirmed.
So, but the way you're saying that, that's Christ-like, that's positive. That can be, sometimes we can say things a negative way, like, do you really want to know? You know what I mean? And so I think the way we say it and the way we not so much the words we say, but the action, the tone of voice
Yeah.
can make a difference, can be more Christ-like. And I think our children, just going back to how this can be a big part of our home life, bringing Jesus constantly to our family by having a good attitude and being positive instead of having that sarcasm in our voice or whatever. You know, so I think and it starts at home. So if we practice it at home, then it's just going to carry with us wherever we go.
Right.
So I added that to the postcode.
You had to make it a little bit better.
But I'm not going to tell them that. You could have
not going to tell the Pope that?
But we do things sometimes that are right. You know? All of us. It's just a common error, I think.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Anything else to go with this? Being a disciple means being constantly ready to bring the love of Jesus to others wherever we are. Are we trying? Yes. We're doing what we can. We're using models. Jesus, Mother Teresa, certainly Pope Francis is a good model.
Mm-hmm.
Of caring and compassion for others. We can always take these conversations home and then think about it. Like, okay, can I do that a little better tomorrow? Or, you know, maybe even just right here tonight with my husband, you know, can I be a little more positive, you know? Or in a phone call.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like with these particular podcasts, I often will use them as a way to think about how I've handled the day.
So I think they're a little bit like examination.
You have conscience almost.
You know, like listening to other people. Most witnesses are, you know, you listen to other people's witness and you're like, oh, and I could have done more maybe at one time when I had an opportunity, you know.
I think that feeling of I could have done more, like I could always do more, but I think the reminders of what other people are doing, those are very good because they're inspirational. You think, well, this person's doing this, I could do that or more myself.
That's one of the blessings, though, too, of having close relationships with people. Like knowing how maybe you've handled something or you've handled something, or just talking about like our lives outside of, for you and I, work, but outside, you know, personal lives. And that's a blessing that I have, is that I do have close friends like you that help me to
Because,
see.
and you know, and that's a very important thing you just brought up. Of course, a conversation for another day, maybe season 3. But if we choose our friends, I mean, it is, that's something you tell your children, choose your friends well, choose nice friends, but, or we pray for that for our children. But it's true of all of us. If you're going to hang around with negative people, that might not be the best for you to try to be more like Christ to people. But if you hang around with positive people, not people that are perfect and don't make mistakes, but positive people who believe and want to be Christ-like, then I think that does rub off on us. And
just like the apostles, ultimately they wanted they wanted what Jesus was talking about. They didn't always do it, but
they were in awe so many times at what he said or did. Do you ever feel in awe at what your friends do?
Yes.
So I think that's maybe where we close today. Let's kind of look for those awe moments in the lives of our friends, in the lives of Jesus, and maybe try to model them, try to imitate them. And that leads us to our next season. Because in season 3, we're going to talk about scriptures and quotes, of course, will be a part of our conversation, but stories of Christ moments, God moments in our lives where we saw him through others. And so I think it'll be really, have some beautiful conversations. It's always interesting to listen to people share close moments from the week, whether they're how beautiful the flowers were on my walk, or whether they're something big that your friend did for you or for
someone else.
So let's close just by asking our Lord, thanking him for bringing us together, thanking him for this conversation, thanking him for challenging us to be constantly ready to bring the love of Jesus to others. Be with us, Lord. Be with all of our listeners as we live our lives each day for you. We ask this in your sweet name.
Amen.
And I thank you, Beth, for being here and for sharing. I hope you'll join us again in season 3.
Oh, she said yes. I saw it.
And thank you, Julie, for sitting with us today. I hope you get to sit with us more often. And thank you to our listeners for being with us. And we'll see you again beginning of June.